In the summer of 1921, at just 39 years old, Franklin Delano Roosevelt felt a strange weakness in his legs. Within days, he couldn't stand. The diagnosis would change his life forever. Polio. For most politicians in that era, paralysis meant the end. For Roosevelt, it became the beginning. This is the story of how Franklin D. Roosevelt turned personal paralysis into national resolve and led America through two of the greatest crises in modern history. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born in 1882 at Hyde Park, New York, into wealth and influence. He attended Groton School, then Harvard. He married his distant cousin Eleanor Roosevelt in 1905. His path seemed predictable: education, politics, public life. By 1910, he was elected to the New York State Senate. In 1913, President Woodrow Wilson appointed him Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He admired his distant cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, and dreamed of similar impact. Everything suggested upward momentum. But history rarely moves in straight lines. In 1920, Roosevelt ran for vice president on the Democratic ticket and lost. It was a setback, but temporary. No one knew a far greater challenge was approaching. Early success doesn't guarantee future security. Stability can vanish. Identity can shift. The real test begins when momentum stops. August 1921. Campobello Island. Roosevelt spent the day sailing and swimming. That evening, he felt chills. By morning, he couldn't stand. Within days, paralysis spread from his legs upward. Doctors diagnosed poliomyelitis. At 39 years old, he lost the use of his legs permanently. For a man who loved sailing, swimming, and physical vigor, this was devastating. In an era when disability carried stigma, many assumed his political future was over. For months, he battled despair privately. He endured painful therapies. He refused to let the world see weakness. But something changed inside him. Polio stripped away his physical mobility, but deepened his emotional strength. He developed patience, empathy, a new connection to struggle. He learned to project confidence even when standing required steel braces and the arm of an aide. Sometimes life removes the version of you that felt strong, so it can build the version that truly is. In 1924, Roosevelt discovered Warm Springs, Georgia, a small town with mineral waters believed to help polio patients. He didn't just visit, he invested in it. He built a rehabilitation center, not only for himself, but for others suffering from polio. There, he connected with patients from working-class families, people far removed from his privileged upbringing. Warm Springs changed him. He was no longer simply a wealthy politician. He became a man who understood vulnerability. He learned to listen more than speak. He learned that leadership begins with empathy. By 1928, he returned to politics, elected governor of New York, not despite polio, but forged by it. Your pain can isolate you, or it can connect you more deeply to others. By 1932, America was collapsing. The Great Depression had left banks failing, farms destroyed, factories silent. Nearly 25% of Americans were unemployed. Hope was scarce. Roosevelt ran for president, promising a New Deal. In March 1933, during his first inaugural address, he delivered a line that echoed across the nation. "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." He understood fear personally. He had lived it. Through programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps, Social Security, and banking reforms, he attempted to stabilize a shattered economy. Not every policy was perfect. Critics were loud, opposition was fierce. But Roosevelt communicated calm. Through his Fireside Chats, broadcast over radio, he spoke directly to American families, explaining complex issues in simple language. He didn't just pass legislation, he restored confidence. In crisis, clarity matters more than charisma. People don't need perfection, they need steadiness. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor was attacked. The next day, Roosevelt addressed Congress, calling it a date which will live in infamy. America entered World War II. The stakes were global. Democracy itself seemed fragile. Despite declining health, Roosevelt led wartime strategy, worked with leaders like Winston Churchill, and coordinated immense industrial mobilization. Behind the scenes, he struggled physically. His health deteriorated from heart disease and the long-term effects of polio. But publicly, he projected resolve. He was elected 4 times, the only U.S. president to serve more than 2 terms. The nation trusted his steadiness in chaos. Leadership isn't about appearing invincible. It's about being reliable under pressure. In April 1945, just months before the end of World War II in Europe, Franklin D. Roosevelt suffered a cerebral hemorrhage at Warm Springs. He died on April 12, 1945. He had led America for 12 years through economic collapse and global war. His body had been limited, his influence was not. His presidency reshaped the role of government, established Social Security, strengthened labor protections, and guided the nation through existential threat. More than policy, he left behind an example. Physical limitation does not limit impact. The measure of your life is not what you're given, but what you build with it. Franklin D. Roosevelt teaches us that strength is layered. First, physical strength, then emotional strength, then moral strength. Polio stripped away the first and revealed the others. He could have retreated into privacy. He could have accepted a quieter life. He could have allowed limitation to define him. Instead, he adapted. He learned to stand with braces. He learned to lead from a wheelchair. He learned to speak calm into crisis. Here's what that means for us. You may not control what happens to you. You may lose abilities, opportunities, momentum, but you still control your response. History remembers Roosevelt not because he avoided struggle, but because he moved forward through it. Franklin D. Roosevelt never walked unaided again after 1921. Yet he carried a nation through economic collapse and global war. His story reminds us that limitations do not erase leadership, they refine it. If this story moved you, subscribe for more cinematic journeys through history, stories that don't just inform, but transform. And tell us in the comments, what challenge in your life could become your turning point?